What's up? It is Thursday in the Earlverse. Just messing around with the algorithm. It's about 11:30 on Thursday, and last night I did a stream and did pretty well. So we're gonna see how the morning Earlomaniacs. Well, there's no need to cut over from Bobby Lee's podcast. I don't think Bobby Santino or the great Carlos Herrera will mind me stealing three people from them. I did enjoy last night. I'm still sniffing around. I know on the analytics page of my studio YouTube page, it says most of my listeners are on from 12 noon to 6 p.m. That's when I'm out auditioning and doing errands and stuff. So I'm trying to manipulate that analytics page into getting people to come here a little earlier. But I do like the nighttime hour. I mean, Jay White is that's crazy. That this guy is one of the best singles wrestlers in the world. And you have him in a dark match with Billy Gunn. I mean, that's crazy. Like, if this guy doesn't fly to WWE when his contract is done, now he'll get buried there, but there should be room for him. I mean, I love Roderick Strong, but Jay White should be on the main card over Roderick Strong or Orange Cassidy. And I love both those guys. But it's just, I'm sorry. Put the women's match on. I mean, nobody really cares about that women's match. And that's not a knock on the women, but it's just, when you have a choice of putting on a Tony Storm match on the main card or a Jay White match, all day, every day, it's got to be Jay White. I mean, why not put Satnam Singh in a match on the main event too? Yeah, but I mean, it's all about water cooler moments on Monday and the potential of Jay White to deliver a 5-star match Sunday at Dynamite versus Tony Storm doing it. No offense to Tony Storm, but Jay White should be against Ospreay, Omega when he comes back, Takeshita, Hobbs. I mean, he's just wasting away at AEW. It's criminal what they're doing. He should have been the devil. How do you have Cole be the devil and he's got a broken ankle? And the other guy from the angle, MJF, is taking months off to heal up. I mean, they need someone in creative to get their act together. Hit the like button too while you're at it. What up, Spurge Snake? I'm stealing people from all streams right now. Yeah, but no one cares about those 3-man tag belts. And Jay White should not be in 3-man tags. He should be singles wrestling. He should be against MJF, Ospreay, Omega, Takeshita, Swerve Strickland, Samoa Joe. I mean, Billy Gunn. What are we doing here? Clip that. Hit the like button if you can. We're talking AEW wrestling. For those of you not in the know, we've got the big pay-per-view from the Chaffetz Center in St. Louis Sunday. Will Ospreay against Bryan Danielson. Um, Samoa Joe against Swerve Strickland. I mean, there are some good matches on the card. Tony Storm defending her belt. I mean, I don't know how Mercedes Moné isn't wrestling. What did you sign her for? Like, man, they need help in AEW, and I'm the guy to turn the company around. Someone clip this and send it to Tony Khan. The long-term storytelling in AEW is out of control. It's like the gas prices here in Southern California. By the way, I'll be at the Comedy Store, speaking of Southern California, Saturday night in the Sam Tripoli spot, 12:15 in the main room. Uh, yeah. I mean, Dr. Nova, I'm trying. Last night I had a fun stream. I think we started around 8:30 at night. So, I'm just seeing how it is, 11:30, noonish. I don't know who else is streaming. Be honest with you, I don't really care. There's always someone streaming. So I just have to do my stuff and hope it's good enough for you guys to watch it. So I'm glad that the six of us are in here together and we can talk wrestling, we can talk politics. We got 2 people kicked off the Trump jury, so they're down to 5. We can talk Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s family endorsing Biden. It serves him right for not putting me on his comedy show. Suck on that. Hackamania discount, don't forget, for 20% off ducats. Earl. I don't believe many people have used my discount code. And that's okay. I wouldn't want to go to Vegas if I didn't have to either. But I'm going because I can drive to it. I'm going for the comedy shows. We are doing something special for the open mic contest. Win Earl Skakel's money. So I hope you guys come to Hackamania. Should be a fun weekend. And whether you like Melton or not, it is a lot of work putting on a comedy weekend. I don't know if you'd call this a festival or whatever, but, if you guys come and support, we do it again next year. So I hope that you guys, if you are financially able to, because I know it's expensive, flights, tickets, hotels and whatnot, but should be a fun time. I don't know the lineup. Go to hackamania.com for all the information. I know that some local Vegas comics will be joining us, and we'll have a good time. I know a lot of people from the Dabbleverse are coming, fans, and we'll see what happens. I'm almost doing it. I'm just curious to see how all these worlds react when we collide. Like, I've never met Melton, Ray, or Pat Dixon, or Tukey, or Carl. So we'll see what happens. But it should be fun. I don't know if they're streaming it or whatnot. I'm assuming they are doing something like that. But I know virtually nothing. And that's the way I like it. I'm a lone wolf. I'm going to come in, do my time, and get out. Go back home and watch hockey playoffs. Or maybe the Vegas Golden Knights will be playing when I'm there. Maybe they'll be playing the LA Kings. I am a one-man wolf pack. I work alone. I'm like Schwarzenegger's unit in Predator. I work alone. Hey, 5 people listening, 5 likes. That's what I like to see. Yes, I am. Baron Corbin, he should be a star. But, I think Will Ospreay and Jay White should look at Baron Corbin and go, we'd be shuffled down to NXT. And I'm sure Ospreay would have to work a little harder after his comments about Triple H grinding on his wife. which I personally liked. But if you don't follow wrestling, you don't know what the hell I'm talking about. We got hockey playoffs coming up. Kings have one more game tonight. I am one Warrior Nation. Uh, I'd love to get one of those T-shirts, but those are long gone. Um, the Kings play the Chicago Blackhawks. I believe the game means nothing. They will be playing for the third year in a row, the Edmonton Oilers. So tonight will be a very weird. It might have been the worst stable ever. Just the Warrior and the Disciple, aka Booty Man, aka the Barber, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, who looked totally different. I didn't even know that was him when he was playing the Disciple. He was pretty jacked. Brutus Beefcake was always a little doughy, but I don't know what. We talked about steroids last night in the stream, but I don't know what he was on. Ed Leslie was on back then, but he was jacked. Um, had high hopes for the Warrior coming back to WCW, but the match was pretty bad. Yeah, I mean, if you look at, of course, that was after his boating accident. Um, I just thought it was a new guy. Well, you're right, Dr. Nova. Gashamania, Raytard the Untrainable. I believe you are new to the stream. Welcome. Welcome. Yeah, Miami Vice was in between shows like Hill Street Blues, Beretta, of course, all the great 70s shows like Barnaby Jones, Cannon, what was it, Mannix, um, Streets of San Francisco, and then Miami Vice said, which were basically, someone else said this, it was like hour-long videos, music videos. And then you had like the Law and Orders, which ironically enough are Dick Wolf. Dick Wolf essentially took over for Michael Mann on Miami Vice. So, Dick Wolf probably was like, well, I wanted a little more serious of a cop show. So you had like Homicide Life on the Street. You had New York Undercover, which was a little bit Miami Vice-ish. And I think Michael Lorenzo was in an episode of Miami Vice as Dennis Farina's character, Al Lombard's son. Which was weird because in that episode, uh, he played Al Lombard's son, but in a later episode, they switched actors. Tim Quill was playing Al Lombard's son. They never really explained the switch, but Crime Story was a great show, Michael Ware. I think the main problem with it was it was just too expensive to film. I think each episode was $1 million. Now, by today's standards, that's nothing. But back in, I think Crime Story was 86 to 88. That was a lot of money. And it would have been a lot more expensive had they continued because Dice Clay was blowing up at the tail end of Crime Story. So I'm sure he would have demanded quite the high salary. Yeah, I mean, what a piece of shit the gentleman Chris Adams was. Which I love Dark Side of the Ring. I mean, they're 5 seasons in. You would have thought by now they'd run out of stories, but I mean, there are so many more stories they could do. Mel Phillips, the ring announcer, who was like allegedly molesting kids. Um, you could do that. You could do. I very much believe you could do one on Kamala. And there's a couple of those world class championship wrestling guys. Colonel De Beers would be an interesting episode. And then they seem to get the rights to WWE videos, so you could probably do some ones on some of the, Louis Spicoli. That's one I think you could do pretty easily. And, some ECW guys. I mean, they had some dark characters. Um, although they did do my favorite ECW story, Mass Transit. Uh, yeah, I mean, you could. I'm trying to think who else was in World Class. I mean, they've done one on Magnum TA. They haven't really done one on Nikita Koloff, but I don't know if there's a dark side to him. He's religious and all that. So, uh, yeah, I mean, ironically enough, I mean, WWF was the first show I always watched, but I really followed World Class Championship Wrestling because I love the announcer. I forget his name. He was really good. He had like a great 70s sportscaster voice. I mean, he made you want to tune in. And, they were much more than just the Von Erichs. You had the Freebirds, you had Bruiser Brody, you had Harley Race, you had Iceman King Parsons, you had Colonel De Beers, you had the Dingo Warrior, you had Kamala when he was a real heel. Like they showed Kamala walking to the ring, people were crying because they thought he was really a savage. He had a great feud with Kerry Von Erich. You had was it the Scott Hall when I think he was the Diamond Stud? Gino Hernandez, Chris Adams. I mean, but I believe they've done a lot of these episodes already. I mean, I don't think you could do one on Iceman King Parsons. He wasn't really that interesting enough. I mean, you'd have to go maybe One Man Gang, but they might have done one on him. Um, I mean, that would be interesting, to hear his take on going from One Man Gang to Akeem. But I don't know if that's really. I don't think there really was a darkness to that character. Yeah, Billy Jack Haynes, especially after the murder, he'd be interesting. And there's probably some ones from. I mean, I guess they've done one on the Von Erichs. I mean, I would think you could do one on Fritz von Erich alone, just for the Nazi memorabilia. And I'm sure they could do one or two on an XPW wrestler. I mean, they've done one on New Jack. I think they've done one on Rob Black. But they could do an episode, I guess, on deathmatch wrestling. I mean, but they've done one on Nick Cage, so I mean, they're getting to the point now where they're probably stretching on who they're going to do episodes on. I mean, I think they did one on Canyon. That would be a good one. I believe they did one on them. Um, and then, some of the other, I'd kind of like to see them do one on jobbers. That's there was some darkness to those guys. I mean, it's a pretty shitty gig. Yeah, Bill Mercer. I was forgetting his name, but like it's something about his voice made me want to tune in. Like he, because back then and when World Class was going on, you know, I think wrestling for the most part was still kayfabe. So he lent an era of like a real newscaster commenting on it. So, I mean, Gary Hart would be a good one. I mean, I don't think he had a really like a fucked up life, but uh, he'd be interesting. Um, Killer Brooks, I don't know. Uh, I mean, the Chris Colt one, I don't know. I didn't really like it that much, and you would have thought uh, I would have given, seemed to stretch blur the lines of straight, gay, and back then that was wild. If you were gay back then, you had to keep that shit under wraps. Yeah, the theme song was great. Yeah, Devastation Incorporated with Skandar Akbar. But I don't know if Skandar Akbar had that much controversy behind him. The Wizard would be a good one. I had no idea he was gay. But I don't know if outside of him being gay, there was anything like it'd probably be tough to fill an hour on the Wizard, but he was probably the first manager I really ever um, kind of watched. But that would be an interesting episode if they could stretch it out a little bit. Um, and then all the guys who died. I mean, you could basically just start doing ones on guys who died. Hercules Hernandez. Um, I mean, there's so many. I mean, how many guys have died that are under 50? I mean, I don't think they've ever done a full episode on Rick Rude. That'd be an interesting one. He certainly had some darkness to him. Um, maybe I'm trying to think of some guys in WCW. Uh, I mean, I'm assuming Jericho could get one done on the Billy and Chuck gay wedding angle. I mean, not that that would be a dark side of the business, but I could certainly an interesting story. Um, having two straight guys play two gay guys. Um, I've always thought they could do one on racism in wrestling. If you can't do a standalone episode on Kamala, you could probably lump Kamala, Junkyard Dog, Slick, and just how black wrestlers were portrayed. I think that'd be a popular episode. Um, I mean, I think they've done one on Lex Luger. That if they haven't, that would be a good one. But they're still, I could see them going a couple more seasons. Especially if you start, like people like Chris Colt. Like I had never heard of him, so if you start doing deep dives into some of the lesser known guys in world class championship wrestling or the NWA. Yeah, I mean, drugs in the business, sub sour milk. Yeah, you could do one on, I don't know, maybe characters that the wrestlers were uncomfortable doing, like Dusty Rhodes, or I'm sorry, Dustin Rhodes. He strikes me as someone who's pretty straight. So the fact that he was asked to play basically an over the top gay character, that that could be interesting. Um, so I mean, there's I mean, pro wrestling is so absurd and crazy that um, you could really. I mean, they're kind of running out of suicides and whatnot. But I would think Spicoli would definitely be one. I think he was just a fan, and then he got into wrestling, and then his life ended pretty quick. Um, you can do. I mean, I think they've done one on valets, more or less. I mean, Major Guns would be interesting, although, like, I don't know if there's you could fill an hour on her. Now she's doing like hardcore porn. Um, I'm trying to think of some other valets. I mean, they've covered the Benoit. I think they had a two-part episode on Benoit. I mean, yeah, the Moolah one was probably one of my least favorites, but it was still very interesting. I mean, by all accounts, Moolah was kind of a bitch and was like a very, it's like the casting couch, I face out here in Hollywood. Um, I heard that episode was pretty accurate. Um, but there's still, I think, some obviously Vince McMahon, although I think he'd ruin your relationship with the WWE if you really did a true episode. I mean, you could do a three-part episode on Vince McMahon and all the scandals he's had. Um, so there's plenty left. There's plenty more meat on the bone, as they say. So I'm glad Dark Side of the Ring. I didn't like the Dark Side of football. It just wasn't the same. Wasn't as good. I watched a few episodes of Dark Side of Comedy, and me and Chandler, my ex, had pitched a show to Vice called The Dark Side of Comedy, because I had gotten Chandler into watching Dark Side of the Ring. because she doesn't even like wrestling, and we still watched it, and so we came up with the idea. But um, welcome to Hollywood, guys. That's how the business works. And the one thing I learned is if you come up with an idea, you better register it with the Writers Guild ASAP. So when someone steals it, you can say, "Hey, it's already registered. You owe me money, honey." So yeah, I'm looking forward to future seasons of Dark Side of the Ring. I mean, I know Colonel De Beers. I believe he was the wrestler who had the angle that he was like anti-wrestling black people and wouldn't have black referees. I'm pretty sure it was Colonel De Beers. I mean, that would be, I don't know if you could fill an hour with that, but it's certainly an interesting uh, storyline. And wrestling in the 60s had some dark secrets, so they still have a lot to pull from. Yeah, well, I mean, RFK Jr. got a little bit of karma this week when his family endorsed Biden. Now he knows how I felt when I couldn't get on his comedy show. Welcome to the business, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. That's what happens when you have Jeremy Piven on your comedy show. You are running for president of the United States of America, and you have a man Me Too out of Hollywood on your show. I don't feel bad at all. I told you guys, I'm like the Mossad. I get my revenge. Might be a week later, might be an hour later, might be 5 years later. Maybe I had something to do with the Kennedys turning on their own. A real wrestling swerve. They could probably do a dark side of hockey. I don't know how many episodes you could do, but look at all the players who've died. Um, Bugard, Belak, Rick Rippon. I mean, many players have died from concussions and CTE problems, and you had Matt Johnson who played in the LA Kings and Minnesota Wild. Literally a couple years ago, just rumbling around the streets of Santa Monica, homeless, and the league did nothing to help the guy. I probably passed Matt Johnson on the streets of Santa Monica and didn't realize it was him. So I mean, you could probably do a season of Dark Side of Hockey, but I don't know if the NHL would give you the footage. Although the NHL should welcome any coverage. By the way, the Arizona Coyotes have announced they're moving to Salt Lake City. I don't know about that. I want a team in Quebec so we could relive the Quebec Montreal rivalry. But, you know, I don't think they'll ever put a team in Quebec again. There's just not enough money. And there's an arena that's already built. But, I get, but I don't think Salt Lake City is going to kill it. Although they are going to have a good team. I mean, the Arizona Coyotes, I guess you'll call them the Salt Lake Coyotes, they will have a very good roster with all these draft picks they have for being shitty the last 10 years. And who knows, maybe you could coerce Austin Matthews, who I believe has 69 goals. Maybe you could, he was from Arizona or is from Arizona. I don't know if he now wants to play in Salt Lake City, but I'm sure the atmosphere will be fun the first year or two, unless they start losing again. I mean, that's the thing. When you do hockey in these non-traditional hockey cities, you have to win or else the fans check out. Dr. Nova, I'm just seeing your idea, but yes, a Chris Von Erich would be good. Um, I thought that was the most interesting death in the Von Erichs because and it wasn't covered at all in the movie, Iron Claw, because the director said that he wasn't interested in making the movie sadder, but it's like, fuck, it's a sad family. Was it 4 of the 5 brothers died? So what the hell's one more death gonna do to the movie? It's not like it's a comedy. Yeah, that would be an interesting one. I mean, basically, he killed himself because he didn't look like his brothers. He was kinda short and pudgy, and, the other 3, were, pretty jacked, especially, Carrie and Kevin. The taller Von Erich, he wasn't, like, fat or anything, but he wasn't as ripped as his brothers, but he was still in good shape. I think The Undertaker was in, World Class Championship Wrestling under the name Big Red. Steve Austin, I forgot he was in World Class Championship Wrestling. So, um, Steve Austin's a guy you could do a Dark Side of the Ring on, but he's got a lot of juice behind the scenes, so I don't know if you could convince people to talk about his dark side. So it should be interesting what future seasons bring. I mean, it's one of their most popular shows, so I'm sure the network wants to keep it going. And I am already looking forward to next season. I think next week's episode is about sensational Sherry Martel, one of the first ladies of wrestling. So, I mean, she was great. I'm sure they'll do some stuff about her work with Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen. Of course, she was in the infamous Booker T. Hulk Hogan, I'm coming to get you. And she's the only one that held it together in that clip. I mean, as soon as Booker T said the dirty word, Sherry just kind of smiled and tapped him on the shoulder and tried to keep it going. And Gene Okerlund was like, help. Someone save me, please. So, we got the hockey playoffs coming up next week. I think most of the matchups are set. I obviously am going to be following the LA Kings. Maybe we'll do some hockey specific episodes of the Earlverse, but I don't know how popular that will be. But I'm all about giving to the fans. Sorry, I'm not usually functional this early in the AM. Well, I guess now it's the PM, so I don't know how people do 3, 4, or 5 hour streams, man. I don't get that. But hit the like button, you kids. There's plenty of ways to support a channel other than financial ways. You can hit the like button. You can post the stream link in Discords or whatever that. I still don't know what Discords are, but you can alert the media that the Earlverse is live. We're probably going to make this episode a little shorter than usual. Probably come back tonight after I get back from yoga and the caffeine has infiltrated my body. But, I appreciate you guys. The Earlverse is the little stream that could. And I'm just trying to provide value for your entertainment time. Of course, we can always talk Miami Vice, but that's a pretty niche segment of the Earlverse. I believe it's me and William Zoom, and that's it. You have to be of a certain age to appreciate Miami Vice, the TV show. I am of that age. So I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. Come back later tonight, and maybe we'll do round 2 in the Earlverse. This is just a baby stream. Dip the toes in the afternoon market. And I appreciate you guys very much. The Earlverse is over.